The ledger didn't just show a list of groceries or hotel rooms. It showed me the exact coordinates of where my soul had died, and the precise moment a homeless man became a better father to my own legacy than I ever was. We are raised to believe that poverty makes people desperate, that hunger turns men into animals, and that if you dangle a golden ticket in front of a starving dog, it will bite your hand to get it. I built my entire worldview on that cynical logic. I thought I was proving a point about human nature. I thought I was the scientist observing a lab rat. But when you hand a desperate man a weapon, you shouldn't be surprised when he uses it to defend the very things you sacrificed for profit. My name is Sophia Langford. You might know that last name. It's usually plastered on the sides of construction sites, massive cargo ships, and the kind of skyscrapers that block out the sun for the rest of the city. This is the story of how I went from a billionaire heiress sitting in a glass tower, judging the world through a security feed, to a woman on her knees in a derelict factory, begging a man I tried to exploit to save me from my own bloodline. I need to know how you all are doing today. I hope you are somewhere warm. I hope the weather is kind to you, because where I am, the rain never seems to stop washing away the sins of this city. Listen to me closely. This isn't just a story about money. It is a story about the cost of a human life. Before I tell you what Ethan bought that tore my heart out, I need you to do something. I need you to subscribe to this channel. Right now. Don't just watch and scroll past. If you leave without subscribing, you are doing exactly what the world did to Ethan, ignoring the uncomfortable truth because it's easier to look away. Don't look away. Click the button. Join us. Because you need to understand what happened next. But let me start from the beginning. I was 26 years old. I had access to accounts with more zeros than most people see in a lifetime, but I was spiritually bankrupt. My parents, Richard and Eleanor Langford, were never really parents. They were board members who happened to share a house with me. I grew up with nannies who changed every 6 months and a credit card that was supposed to replace a mother's hug. I learned early that money was the only language that mattered. It bought silence. It bought loyalty. It bought distance. I believed everyone was corruptible. I believed that under the right pressure, the noble poor would turn just as greedy and vicious as the socialites I rubbed elbows with at charity galas. I wanted to prove it. I wanted to prove that the only difference between the homeless and the boardroom sharks was opportunity. That was why I found myself in the Lower East District on a Tuesday night. It was pouring. The kind of rain that hurts when it hits your skin. I sat in the back of my armored SUV, watching the streets through tinted glass. My head of security, a man named Grover, asked me if I was sure about this. I told him to stay in the car. I stepped out. The smell of wet asphalt and old garbage hit me instantly. I walked toward the underpass beneath the I-95. It was a known spot for the displaced. I saw tents made of blue tarp. I saw shopping carts filled with wet blankets. And then I saw him. Ethan Reed. He didn't look like the others. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't sleeping. He was sitting on a plastic crate, his body curved forward in a protective C-shape. In his arms, wrapped in 3 layers of mismatched coats, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7. She was shivering, but she was asleep. He was taking the brunt of the wind to keep the spray off her face. He looked gaunt. His cheekbones were sharp enough to cut, and his eyes had that hollow, dark look of someone who hasn't slept a full night in years. But he was clean-shaven, using a razor he probably saved for job interviews that never happened. I approached him. My heels clicked on the concrete, a sound that didn't belong there. He looked up. He didn't flinch. He just pulled the girl tighter. "I don't have anything to give you, lady," he said. His voice was rough and used. "I'm not here to take," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled it out. The black card. It was metal, heavy, cold. It had no limit. It was tied to a personal account I used for discretionary spending. "I want to give you this." Ethan looked at the card, then at my face. He didn't reach for it. "What's the catch? You want me to move? You want this spot?" "No catch," Primelit. I'm a philanthropist. I'm running a social experiment. I want to see what a man in your position does with unlimited resources. Take it. The pin is 1984. Spend what you must. Use it to get out of here. Use it to buy a castle. I don't care. He looked at his daughter. Ava. I learned her name later. He looked at her wet hair plastered to her forehead. The pride in his eyes warred with the desperation of a father who couldn't keep his child warm. Desperation won. It always does. He reached out. His fingers were rough, stained with engine grease that wouldn't wash off. He took the card. I pay you back, he asked. You don't pay me back, I said, stepping away, already feeling the thrill of the game. You just show me who you really are. I turned and walked back to the SUV. I didn't look back. I didn't want him to see the smirk on my face. I knew what would happen. They always go for the vices first. Alcohol to numb the cold. A hotel room that costs $5,000 a night just because they can. Drugs. Gambling. I gave him the rope, and I was ready to watch him hang himself. I got back into the car. Let's go, Grover. As we drove away, leaving them in the dark, I opened my tablet. I had a direct link to the banking interface. I could see every transaction in real time. I could see the location, the merchant, the item, the timestamp. I was the eye in the sky. The first hour passed. Nothing. I sat in my penthouse, the city lights below me looking like scattered jewels. I poured myself a glass of water, waiting. Maybe he thought it was a fake. Maybe he was afraid to use it. 2 hours passed. My skepticism started to turn into annoyance. Spend it, I thought. Prove me right. Show me that you're just as broken and greedy as my father was. Then, the notification chimed. A sharp, digital ping that echoed in the silent apartment. I looked at the screen. The first transaction. My heart hammered. This was it. The liquor store. The casino. A ticket to Vegas. I read the text on the screen. I blinked, sure I was misreading it. Merchant, 24/7 CVS Pharmacy, 4th Street. Amount, $14.50. Items, pediatric amoxicillin, 1 bottle of water, 1 pack of Band-Aids. I stared at the number. $14.50. He had a card that could buy the building, and he bought antibiotics and water. I felt a strange twinge in my chest. Disappointment. No, that wasn't it. It was confusion. Why didn't he buy food? Why didn't he get a hotel room first? The antibiotic meant the girl was sick. Infection. He prioritized her health over his own shelter. Okay, I thought. That's just the immediate need. He's testing the card. He's seeing if it works. The real spending comes next. I waited. I didn't sleep that night. I sat there, refreshing the feed. 3 a.m. Another ping. Merchant, Red Roof Inn. Amount, $89. Items, 1 night stay, single room. He went to a budget motel. A dump on the outskirts of the city. He could have booked the Ritz. He could have booked a suite at the Plaza. He booked a room for $89. I frowned at the screen. What are you playing at, Ethan? I whispered to the empty room. You have the golden goose. Why are you eating crumbs? This wasn't fitting the profile. My father always told me, give a beggar $1, he buys bread. Give him $1 million, he destroys himself. Ethan wasn't destroying himself. He was surviving. But barely. He was using the card with a terrifying amount of restraint. It was the restraint of a man who was terrified it would be taken away at any second. I closed the laptop, frustrated. It was only the first night. The corruption takes time. It seeps in slowly. He would realize the power he held soon enough. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't get the image of his grease-stained fingers out of my head, or the way he shielded the girl. And that first purchase. Amoxicillin. I didn't know it then, but that small bottle of pink medicine was the first loose thread. A thread that, if I pulled it, would unravel the tapestry of lies my family had spent 50 years weaving. I thought I was testing him. I had no idea he was about to test me. The next morning, the sun didn't shine. The fog had rolled in, thick and gray. I grabbed my coffee and opened the tablet again. There were 3 new transactions from the morning. I expected breakfast. Maybe a diner. Merchant. Public library. Amount, $2.50. Items, printing/copying services. Merchant. Goodwill. Amount, $18. Items, men's button-down shirt, slacks, tie. Merchant. Supercuts. Amount, $15. Items, haircut. I froze. He wasn't partying. He wasn't running. He was preparing. He was getting a job. My stomach dropped. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be a leech. He was supposed to prove that charity was a waste. Instead, within 12 hours, he had medicated his child, secured shelter, and was trying to re-enter the workforce. He was using my money to fix the things that society had broken. But then, the 4th notification came through. And this one stopped me cold. It wasn't a purchase. It was a recurring transfer setup. He had gone to a bank branch. He had used the card to set up a small, automatic transfer. Recipient, St. Mary's Hospital, Oncology Ward. Amount, $50/monthly. Memo, for the ones who can't pay. In memory of Sarah. Sarah. Who was Sarah? I typed the name Ethan Reed into my database again. I had run a basic background check before, just criminal records. Clean. But now I dug deeper. I needed to know who I was dealing with. I pulled up his employment history, his marriage license, and then I saw it. Ethan Reed, former senior safety engineer at. I stopped breathing. The logo on his old employment file was a blue gear with a green leaf. Langford Industries. He used to work for us. He used to work for my father. And his wife, Sarah Reed? Deceased 3 years ago. Cause of death, rare respiratory failure linked to toxic exposure. My hand shook as I held the tablet. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. He wasn't just a random homeless man. He was a victim of the very empire that printed the credit card he was now holding. He didn't know who gave him the card. He didn't know I was a Langford. He just thought I was a philanthropist. But he was donating money to an oncology ward with my money, in memory of a wife my company might have killed. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I had to see him. I had to see what he was doing. This wasn't a game anymore. This was a ghost story, and the ghost had just walked through my front door. I grabbed my coat. I didn't call Grover. I drove myself. I tracked the GPS on the card. He was at a diner on 5th. I needed to see his face. I needed to know if he knew. But as I merged onto the highway, the tablet pinged again. A new transaction. Merchant, the U.S. Postal Service. Amount, $12.75. Items, certified mail to Department of Environmental Protection. My blood ran cold. Why was a homeless man sending certified mail to the DEP? I slammed on the gas. The rain started again, harder this time, pounding against the windshield like fists. I thought I was the one holding the leash, but as the city blurred past me, I realized I had tied myself to a man who was walking straight toward a cliff, and he was dragging me with him. What was in that envelope? And why did I suddenly feel like my life depended on stopping it? The most dangerous lies aren't the ones we tell others. They are the ones we tell ourselves to justify standing next to the person we are destroying. I parked the car 3 blocks away from the diner. I couldn't risk him seeing the armored SUV. It screamed wealth, and right now, I needed to be invisible. I told Grover to stay put. He didn't like it. He muttered something about protocol and unpredictable assets, but I slammed the door before he could finish. I walked through the rain, pulling my coat collar up. I wasn't Sophia Langford, CEO. I was just a woman in a trench coat, soaking wet, looking for answers. I found the diner. It was one of those places with fogged-up windows and a bell that jingled too loudly when you opened the door. I didn't go in yet. I stood outside, peering through the glass, shielding my eyes from the glare of the neon sign buzzing above me. There they were. Booth 4. The vinyl was cracked, taped over with silver duct tape. Ethan sat opposite Ava. He had ordered a stack of pancakes. Just one stack. He wasn't eating. He was cutting them into tiny, bite-sized triangles for her. He poured the syrup with the precision of a surgeon, making sure every piece had just enough sugar but not too much. Ava was eating like she hadn't seen hot food in a week. Which she probably hadn't. And Ethan? He was drinking a cup of black coffee. That was it. I checked my phone. The transaction history showed he had spent $12.50 here. Enough for the pancakes and the coffee. He hadn't bought himself a meal. He had an unlimited black card in his pocket, a card that could buy this entire diner franchise, and he was starving himself so he wouldn't feel like he was abusing the privilege. It made me angry. It made me irrationally angry. Eat, I mentally screamed at him. Order a steak. Order the menu. Why are you being so noble? It makes it harder to hate you. I pulled out my tablet, huddled under the awning of a closed pawn shop next door. I needed to know the history. I needed to know about Sarah. I logged into the Langford Industries archived personnel files. Access level, CEO. I typed in read, Ethan. The file loaded. It was thick. 7 years of employment. Senior safety engineer. His performance reviews were stellar. Detailed. Ethical. Too rigid on protocols, one manager noted as a negative. Then I scrolled to the end. The termination. Date, 3 years ago. Reason, violation of NDA. Corporate espionage, unsubstantiated. Insubordination. Notes, employee attempted to halt production on Sector 7 due to air quality concerns. Claims were dismissed by upper management. Employee leaked internal memos to a journalist. Journalist killed story after legal pressure. Employee fired with cause. Benefits revoked. My thumb hovered over the screen. Sector 7. That was the chemical processing plant in the valley. The one my father, Richard Langford, had closed down quietly 2 years ago. He said it was restructuring. I opened the supplementary file. Read, Sarah, spouse. There were medical claims. Denied medical claims. She had developed a rare form of pulmonary fibrosis. The kind you get from breathing in heavy metals. The kind you get from living in the company housing units next to Sector 7. She died 6 months after he was fired. The timeline was a noose, and it was tightening around my neck. My father fired Ethan for trying to warn people, then cut his health insurance while his wife was dying from the poison his factory pumped into the air. And when she died, the medical debt must have crushed him. That's how a senior engineer ends up in a tunnel. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't laziness. It was Langford Industries. It was me. I looked back through the window. Ethan was wiping syrup off Ava's chin. He was smiling. It was a tired, broken smile, but it was genuine. He had lost everything because of my last name, and here I was, playing God with a credit card, waiting for him to slip up. I had to go in. I had to talk to him. I told myself it was to retrieve the card, to end the experiment. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. I wanted to see if he recognized me. I wanted to see the hatred in his eyes up close. I pushed the door open. The bell jingled. The smell of old fryer grease and coffee hit me. Ethan looked up instantly. His instincts were sharp. He saw me, and his hand instinctively went to the backpack sitting on the bench next to him. Protective. I walked over. Mind if I sit? He hesitated, then slid the backpack closer to Ava and nodded at the empty seat. It's your money paying for the coffee, he said. His voice was guarded. You checking the receipts? I get notifications, I said, sliding into the booth. I kept my hands on the table where he could see them. You're not spending much. Antibiotics. A motel. A haircut. Pancakes. I'm buying what I need, he said. I'm not here to rob you. I told you there's no limit. There's always a limit, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. They were an intense, icy blue. Intelligent eyes. Everything comes with a cost. Even free money. Especially free money. Ava looked up at me. She had big, dark eyes. She didn't speak. She just chewed her pancake slowly, watching me like I was a predator. She doesn't talk much, Ethan said, noticing my gaze. Not since we lost our house. What happened? I asked. I knew. But I needed to hear him say it. I needed to see if he would blame the world or blame the specific people responsible. Ethan looked down at his coffee cup. He traced the rim with his finger. Bad luck, he said. Dominoes. One thing falls, then the next. My wife got sick. The insurance company found a loophole. Then I lost my job because I wouldn't look the other way when things got dangerous. After that, well, grief is expensive. Lawyers are expensive. He didn't name Langford. He didn't rant. He just called it bad luck. It was heartbreakingly dignified. And now? I asked. You bought a suit. A shirt and tie from Goodwill. I have an interview today, he said. A spark of hope lit up his face for a second. Civil engineering firm uptown. They don't know about the gap in my resume. Or the address. You think they'll hire you? I'm a good engineer, he said firmly. I know structures. I know how things break. And I know how to fix them before they collapse. The irony hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He knew how to fix things before they collapsed. My father had fired him for exactly that. What about the letter? I asked. The air in the booth changed instantly. Ethan went still. His hand stopped tracing the cup. What letter? The post office, I said. Certified mail. $12.75. Who are you writing to, Ethan? He stared at me. He was assessing me, figuring out if I was a friend or a spy. He didn't know I was the enemy, but he knew I was watching. Closure, he said finally. Just tying up loose ends from my old life. He was lying. You don't send closure via certified mail to the Department of Environmental Protection. You send evidence. Ethan, I said, leaning in. You have a chance here. A fresh start. You have a card that can get you an apartment, a car, a new life in another city. Why are you digging up the past? Why not just take the money and run? He looked at Ava. She had finished her food and was now drawing on a paper napkin with a crayon the waitress had given her. She was drawing a house. A house with black smoke coming out of the chimney. Because, Ethan whispered, his voice low and intense, if I run, they win. And if they win, it happens to someone else. Someone else's wife. Someone else's daughter. I can't build a new life on a foundation of cowardice. He looked at me, and for a second, I felt like he could see right through my expensive coat and my fake philanthropy. You gave me this card to test me, he said, to see if money would change me. It won't. But it gives me the one thing I didn't have before. What's that? Volume, he said. Money buys a microphone. And I have a lot to say. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Grover. Miss Langford. The board is asking for you. And we just got a flag from legal. Someone is requesting old files on Sector 7. Anonymous IP. Is that you? Panic flared in my chest. If Ethan's letter reached the DEP, and they opened an investigation, the first thing they would do is subpoena the records. If my father found out Ethan was the source, he wouldn't just fire him this time. My father had fixers. Men who made problems disappear in ways that looked like accidents. I was sitting across from a man who was holding a grenade, and he was about to pull the pin in a room where I kept all my family portraits. But looking at him, looking at the way he touched Ava's hair, looking at the absolute lack of greed in his eyes, I couldn't do it. I couldn't take the card back. I couldn't call security. I made a choice. The first betrayal. Not of him, but of my family. And simultaneously, a betrayal of him, because I didn't tell him who I was. I decided to keep him close. To manage him. To intercept the explosion before it killed us both. I can help you, I said. Ethan blinked. Help me with what? The interview, I lied smoothly. I know people. I can make a call. Ensure you get a fair shake. But in exchange, I need you to trust me. I need you to run your closure through me first. Lawyers are sharks, Ethan. You need one of your own. He studied me. Why? Why do you care? Because, I said, and this part was true, I'm tired of watching the bad guys win. He hesitated. Then slowly he nodded. Okay, but I'm not stopping. I'm going to that interview, and I'm going to fix what was broken. He stood up, gathering the backpack and lifting Ava into his arms. Thank you for the breakfast, he said. I watched him walk out into the rain, his new Goodwill suit hidden under his old coat. As soon as he was gone, I pulled out my phone and called Grover. Intercept that letter, I ordered. Miss Langford. The certified mail from the post office on 4th. Get a contact at the sorting facility. Intercept it. Do not let it reach the DEP. That's a federal offense, ma'am. I don't care, I hissed. If that letter lands, we all go down. Just do it. And Grover. Yes. Put a 24-hour physical detail on Ethan Reed. I want to know everywhere he goes. Especially if he goes near the old factory. I hung up. My heart was pounding. I had just ordered a felony to protect my family, but I told myself I was doing it to protect Ethan. If my father found out about him, Ethan would be crushed. I was buying time. But as I sat there in the booth, staring at Ava's drawing on the napkin, the house with the black smoke, I realized I had just become the very thing I hated. I was manipulating a good man to cover my family's sins. I picked up the napkin. Under the house, in crude, childish letters, she had written one word. Mommy. I crumbled the napkin in my fist. The waitress walked over to clear the table. He's a nice guy, she said, wiping the table. Left a $5 tip. Said it was all he had in cash. He tipped 40% of his meal cost. I walked out of the diner feeling dirtier than I ever had in my life. I had to stop him from exposing the truth, but I couldn't stop myself from wanting him to succeed. I got back into the SUV. Where to? Grover asked. The factory, I said. Sector 7. I need to see what he's trying to prove. We drove toward the industrial district. The rain turned the sky the color of a bruise. As we drove, another notification pinged. Merchant, Toys R Us. Amount, $24.99. Items, stuffed bear, medical scrubs edition. He bought her a toy. A bear dressed like a doctor. Probably to help her process the trauma of the hospitals. I felt a crack in the armor I had built around my heart for 26 years. This man was using my money to heal a wound I had helped inflict. But the real devastating blow came 10 minutes later. My phone rang. It was my father, Richard Langford. He never called. He only had his assistant call. Sophia, His voice was gravel and scotch. "Father, I heard a rumor," he said. "Security tells me someone has been accessing the archived files on the Reed termination." "Was that you?" My throat went dry. I was just reviewing old liabilities for the quarterly risk assessment. "Good," he said, "because we have a situation. We're moving up the demolition of Sector 7. Tomorrow morning. We're imploding the main silo." "Tomorrow? Why?" "Loose ends, Sophia. Better to bury the past than let it rust. Make sure you're at the office. We have a press release to draft." He hung up. I stared at the phone. Tomorrow. Ethan was going to an interview today. He thought he had time to build a case. He didn't know that the evidence, the physical evidence inside that factory, was being destroyed in less than 24 hours. And if he found out, he wouldn't go to an interview. He would go there, to the factory. I had to choose. Tell him and risk him getting himself killed trying to stop it? Or keep quiet, let the factory fall, and save his life while destroying his only chance at justice? I looked at the transaction log. He was at the suit store. He was trying to build a future. Let him have the future, I thought. Let the past burn. But I didn't know that Ava had left something behind in that factory years ago. Something that Ethan would run into a burning building to retrieve. And I didn't know that by intercepting his letter, I had cut off his only lifeline. The game had changed. It wasn't about money anymore. It was a race. And I was driving the getaway car for the wrong side. Ethan has an interview that could change his life, but the evidence of his wife's death is about to be destroyed. Sophia has intercepted his letter, thinking she is saving him, but she might have just doomed him. You can buy a man a suit, you can buy him a hot meal, but you cannot buy the fire out of his belly when he realizes the people who killed his wife are about to bury the murder weapon. I sat in my car outside the engineering firm, watching the entrance. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city slick and shining under the gray sky. My phone was buzzing with messages from the board, from Grover, from my father's executive assistant. I ignored them all. I was fixated on the front door of Henderson and Associates. 45 minutes. That's how long he'd been in there. I had pulled strings. I admit it. I made an anonymous call to Mr. Henderson, a man who owed my family favors, and suggested he look out for a brilliant but down on his luck candidate coming in at 10 a.m. I paved the road. All Ethan had to do was walk it. If he got this job, he would have a salary, insurance, a future. He would take Ava, move to a quiet suburb, and forget about the factory. He would forget about the crusade. The experiment would end with a success story. Homeless man uses credit card to regain middle-class life. Everyone wins. My family's secret stays buried under the rubble of Sector 7, and Ethan Reed gets to live. The door opened. Ethan stepped out. He looked different. It wasn't just the Goodwill suit or the haircut. It was his posture. His spine was straight. He walked with the rhythm of a man who had a place to be. He wasn't clutching his backpack to his chest anymore. He was swinging it lightly by the strap. He spotted me, or rather, he spotted the philanthropist waiting down the block, and walked over. A genuine smile broke across his face. It was the first time I'd seen him look younger than 40. "Well?" I asked, rolling down the window. "Junior project manager," he said, the disbelief still coloring his voice. "They offered it on the spot. Said they needed someone with field experience, who understands safety protocols. Benefits start day 1. I felt a rush of relief so strong it made me dizzy. "That's incredible, Ethan. You did it." "I start Monday," he said. He looked at Ava, who was sitting in the back of my car. I had insisted on watching her during the interview so she didn't have to sit in the lobby. "We can get an apartment. A real one. With a stove. You should celebrate," I said, eager to lock this reality in. "Take the card. Go to an Italian place. Get ice cream. Book a hotel for the week until you find a place. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I will. Thank you. I don't know who you are really, but you saved us. You saved yourself, I said. Now go. Go be a dad. He nodded, took Ava's hand, and walked down the street toward a cafe. I watched them go. It was over. I had managed the crisis. I reached for the ignition to start the car. Then the world tilted. I saw Ethan stop. He was standing in front of an electronics store window. A wall of televisions was displaying the midday news. I couldn't hear the audio, but I saw the cheerin flashing in bold red letters at the bottom of the screen. Breaking. Langford Industries announces controlled demolition of Sector 7 plant. Time. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Reason. Urban Renewal Project. I saw Ethan's back stiffen. The relaxed, hopeful posture vanished instantly. He froze, staring at the screen. The smile died. The ice cream celebration died. I saw him clutch Ava's hand tighter. He turned slowly, looking around the street, his eyes scanning the horizon until they locked onto the distant, smog-choked silhouette of the industrial district. He didn't look at me. He looked at the factory. Then, he pulled out his phone. He made a call. I looked at my tablet. The transaction log was open. Status. Pending. He wasn't calling a realtor. He wasn't calling a restaurant. He hung up, put the phone in his pocket, and knelt down to Ava. He spoke to her urgently. She nodded, clutching her medical bear. He stood up and started walking. But not toward the hotel. He was walking toward the subway station that led to the industrial line. No, y whisperat. Don't do it, Ethan. Don't be a hero. I threw the car into gear and peeled away from the curb, cutting across traffic to catch up to him. I pulled up alongside him as he marched down the sidewalk. Ethan! I yelled. Get in the car. He kept walking. His face was set in stone. The gratitude was gone, replaced by a cold, terrifying determination. Ethan, stop. You have the job. You have the new life. Don't throw it away. He stopped and turned to me. The look in his eyes chilled me to the bone. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment. You knew, he said. What? You knew about the demolition, he said. That's why you pushed for the interview today. That's why you wanted me busy. I wanted you safe. I snapped, the lie crumbling. Ethan, that place is a death trap. They're blowing it up in less than 20 hours. Whatever you think is in there, it's not worth your life. It's not worth leaving Ava alone again. It's not just a building, he said, his voice shaking. I hid the logs. The physical air quality samples. The ones I took the day Sarah got sick. I couldn't get them out past security, so I sealed them in the ventilation intake of the main filtration unit. Unit 4. My stomach dropped. Physical samples. If those survived, they would contain the chemical fingerprint of the toxin. It was undeniable proof. They're destroying it tomorrow, I pleaded. It's over. Let it go. If that building falls, Ethan said, the truth about what killed my wife falls with it. And Langford gets away with it. They'll build condos on top of her grave. You have a daughter. I pointed at Ava. Think about her. I am thinking about her, he roared, causing a passerby to flinch. I'm thinking about the world she has to grow up in. A world where people like Langford can poison us and buy their way out of it. If I don't get those logs, I'm just another guy who took a payoff to shut up. Is that what you want me to be? He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and descended into the subway station. I sat there, idling in the bus lane, horns honking behind me. I had a choice. I could drive away. I could let him go. He would probably get arrested for trespassing, or worse, get crushed in a building prepped for explosives. I could wash my hands of it. But the credit card was in his pocket. And my name, or at least my agency, was tied to this. And God help me, he was right. I hit the steering wheel in frustration. Damn it! I couldn't follow him into the subway. I had to get ahead of him. I drove. I drove like a maniac toward the perimeter of Sector 7. While I drove, the tablet on the passenger seat started pinging. The catastrophe was unfolding in real time on the ledger. He was gearing up. Merchant, Hardware City. Amount, $452.18. Items, 24-inch crowbar, high lumens tactical flashlight, bolt cutters, N95 masks, box of 20, industrial rope, climbing carabiners. He wasn't just going to look. He was breaking in. He was going to scale the perimeter. Merchant, Radio Shack, old stock. Amount, $89. Items, police scanner, signal jammer. He was using his engineering brain. He knew the site would have security. He was preparing for war. I reached the outer perimeter of the factory grounds. It was a desolate wasteland of cracked concrete and rusted chain-link fences. The main building loomed like a rotting carcass against the darkening sky. Security lights were already humming to life. I parked the SUV in the shadow of a defunct water tower. I waited. 20 minutes later, I saw him. He emerged from the tree line near the south gate. He was wearing the dark clothes he'd bought at Goodwill, not the suit. He had the backpack strapped tight. He looked like a Spec Ops soldier, except he was just a dad who missed his wife. He moved to the fence. He didn't cut it. He knew where the weak spot was. He used to work here. He shimmied under a loose section of the chain link. He was inside. I grabbed my own flashlight from the glove box. I took off my high heels and put on the running shoes I kept in the trunk. I pulled my hood up. I had to go in. Not to stop him anymore. It was too late for that. I had to go in because if security caught him, they wouldn't just arrest him. My father's private security firm, Blackwood Solutions, was guarding the site. They had orders to ensure 0 interruptions before the demolition. They were authorized to use force. I slipped under the same fence. The mud was cold and slick. I trailed him, staying 50 yards back. He moved through the scrapyard like a ghost, dodging the patrols. He knew the rhythm of the shift changes. He reached the side door of the main processing plant. It was welded shut. He pulled out the crowbar. Clang. The sound echoed. Too loud. A spotlight from a guard tower swept over the area. Ethan froze, pressing himself flat against the rusted metal wall. The light passed him by inches. I held my breath. He worked the crowbar again, slower this time. The metal groaned. The weld snapped. He slipped inside. I ran across the open ground and slipped in behind him before the door swung shut. Inside, the factory was a cathedral of shadows. It smelled of sulfur and decay. The air was thick with dust. It was silent, except for the dripping of water and the distant hum of the city outside. "Ethan," I whispered. He spun around, the flashlight beam hitting me in the face. He raised the crowbar, his eyes wild. "You followed me," he hissed. I lowered my hood. "Put the weapon down, Ethan." "You're calling the police," he accused, backing away. "If I wanted the police, they'd be here," I said, stepping into the light. "I'm here because you're walking into a demolition zone, you idiot. The charges are already set. The structural integrity is compromised. If you sneeze wrong, this whole place comes down on our heads." "I know the building," he said stubbornly. "Unit 4 is in the basement levels. The sub-basement. It's the most stable part of the structure. It's also where the gas settles," I said. "Did you bring an O2 meter?" He hesitated. He hadn't. "You're an engineer," I scolded, channeling my father's authority. "You know the risks. You're going into a confined space in a toxic environment without proper monitoring." "I have to try," he said, his voice cracking. "It's the only way." I looked at him. I looked at the desperation etched into his face, and I realized that for the first time in my life, I was standing on the wrong side of the warning tape. I sighed. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened the app that controlled the building schematics, access I still had as a Langford. The elevators are cut, I said, looking at the screen. We have to take the service stairs. But the motion sensors are active on level 2. Ethan lowered the crowbar. He stared at me, confusion warring with adrenaline. Who are you? He asked. Really? A philanthropist who has the schematics for a condemned chemical plant. I looked him in the eye. This was the moment. The lie was getting too heavy to carry. But if I told him the truth now, he would leave me here, or worse, turn on me. I'm someone who knows how this company works, I said, dodging the question. And I know that if we trigger an alarm, Blackwood Security will be on us in 3 minutes. Do you want the logs, or do you want to get caught? He studied me for a long second. Then he nodded once. A truce. Lead the way, he said. No, I said. We go together. You have the tools. I have the map. We moved deeper into the belly of the beast. The deeper we went, the colder it got. The silence was oppressive. We reached the stairwell. I unlocked the maglock using a bypass code on my phone. We descended. Level 1. Clear. Level 2. Wait, I hissed, grabbing his arm. Down the hallway, a red laser grid flickered across the corridor. Motion sensors. They upgraded the security, Ethan whispered. That wasn't here when I worked here. They're protecting something, I said. Demolition sites don't need laser grids. They're trying to keep people out of the sub-basement. Because the waste is still there, Ethan realized. They didn't clean it up. They're just blowing the building on top of the barrels to bury it. If he was right, the explosion tomorrow wouldn't just be a demolition. It would be an environmental dirty bomb. It would release a cloud of toxic dust that would blanket the Lower East Side. We have to stop the demolition, I said, the horror dawning on me. First, we get the proof, Ethan said. Then we stop the clock. He looked at the laser grid. Then he looked at the ceiling. There were pipes running overhead. Can you climb? He asked me. I looked at my designer jeans and my running shoes. I looked at the grease-covered pipes. I do rock climbing at the gym, I said weakly. Close enough, Ethan said. He unspooled the industrial rope from his bag. I'll go first. I'll secure the line. You follow. He tossed the rope over the pipe. He hoisted himself up with a grunt of effort. He crawled over the sensors, suspended in the air. He was strong. Desperation made him strong. He dropped down on the other side. He motioned for me to come. I grabbed the rope. I swung my legs up. My muscles burned. I shimmied across the pipe, the red lasers humming beneath me. If I fell, the alarm would sound, and we'd be trapped. I made it to the other side. Ethan caught me as I dropped. For a moment, we were close. I smelled the rain on his coat and the faint, sterile scent of the hospital soap he used. You're not bad for a rich girl, he muttered. Don't get used to it, I breathed, straightening my coat. We reached the heavy blast doors of the sub-basement. Unit 4. This is it, he said. He put his hand on the wheel of the door. The logs are in the intake vent on the south wall. He turned the wheel. It groaned, rusted tight. Help me, he grunted. I grabbed the other side of the wheel. We pushed together. 1, 2, 3. The seal broke with a hiss of escaping air. We pushed the door open. And then we froze. We weren't alone. Inside the room, lit by portable construction lights, were 3 men. They were wearing hazmat suits. They were loading yellow barrels onto a cart. They stopped and looked at us. One of them reached for a radio. Intruders in Sector 4, the voice crackled. Initiate lockdown. The heavy steel door behind us slammed shut with a deafening clang. The wheel spun, locking us in. We were trapped in the toxic heart of the factory, with 3 men who were scrubbing the crime scene. And the timer for the demolition was ticking down. Ethan raised his crowbar. "Stay behind me," he told me. I looked at my phone. No signal. We were in the tomb, and the walls were about to come down. We are trapped in the sub-basement with the cleanup crew. The exit is sealed. The demolition is set for 6 a.m. Ethan is ready to fight, but Sophia knows that brute force won't win this. In a room full of poison, the most toxic thing wasn't the chemical waste leaking from the barrels. It was the secret I was keeping in my throat, choking me faster than the smoke ever could. The standoff lasted 3 seconds. That's how long it takes for a brain to decide between fight, flight, or freeze. Ethan didn't freeze. The lead hazmat suit, let's call him Suit 1, dropped his hand from the radio and reached for a holster at his belt. A taser. Maybe a gun. I didn't want to find out. "Get down!" Ethan screamed. He didn't wait for permission. He swung the crowbar. Not at the men, but at the overhead construction light. Smash! The bulb exploded in a shower of sparks and glass, plunging the sub-basement into near-total darkness. The only light came from the flickering red LEDs of the hazmat suit's instrument panels and the sweeping beam of Ethan's dropped flashlight rolling on the floor. "Secure them!" Suit 1 yelled, his voice distorted by the mask. I felt a hand grab my coat. It was Ethan. He yanked me behind a stack of pallets just as a taser prong sparked against the concrete where I had been standing. "The vent!" Ethan hissed in my ear. "Boost me up. I get the logs. We go out through the shaft." "We can't," I whispered back, adrenaline making my hands shake. "The shaft's narrow at the junction. We'll get stuck." "How do you know that?" he snapped. "Just trust me." A beam of light swept over our heads. Heavy boots stomped on the concrete. They were fanning out. "Come out," Suit 1's voice echoed. "There's no way out. The air scrubbers are off. Oxygen levels will drop in 10 minutes. You're just accelerating the inevitable." Ethan looked at me. His face was streaked with grease and sweat. He pulled the N95 mask out of his pocket, the one he bought at the hardware store, and shoved it into my hand. "Put this on," he ordered. "What about you?" "I'm used to bad air," he said grimly. "Put it on." He stood up. He was going to draw their fire. He was going to sacrifice himself so I could stay hidden. Again. I couldn't let him do it. I grabbed his wrist. "No," I said. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I used the weapon I had been born with. The weapon of entitlement. I stood up, hands raised, stepping into the light. "Wait," I commanded. I didn't scream it like a victim. I barked it like a boss. "Stand down."
Code autorisation L7 Alpha Sierra.
The silence that followed was deafening. The hazmat suits froze. Ethan looked at me from the shadows, his eyes wide with confusion. Suit 1 stepped forward, lowering his weapon slightly. That's an executive override code." "Who are you?" "I'm the independent auditor sent by the board," I lied, my voice steady despite my heart hammering against my ribs. "I'm here to verify the payload before the demolition. You idiots locked us in. If I don't report in 5 minutes, my team triggers a federal investigation." It was a gamble. A massive, stupid gamble. Suit 1 hesitated. He looked at his partners. "We didn't get a manifest for an auditor." "That's because it's a surprise audit," I snapped, channeling my mother's coldest glare. "Now, unlock that door, or I will ensure your contract with Blackwood is terminated with cause." For a second, I thought it worked. Suit 1 lowered his arm completely. He walked toward the door wheel. Then, his radio crackled. "Unit 1, this is command. We have visual on the intruders. Male, former employee. Female, Unidentified civilian.
No ditersoceres.
Neutralize them. The lie shattered. Suit 1 turned back to me, raising the taser. Nice try, lady. Wham! The crowbar connected with Suit 1's helmet. Ethan had launched himself from the darkness like a coiled spring. The man went down, the helmet cracking. The other two rushed him. Run! Ethan yelled at me. Get to the logs. I didn't run. I saw the taser lying on the floor next to the fallen man. I dove for it. Suit 2 had Ethan in a chokehold. Suit 3 was punching him in the ribs. I heard the sickening sound of bone on impact. I pointed the taser at Suit 2. I pulled the trigger. The prongs hit him in the back. He convulsed and collapsed, releasing Ethan. Ethan gasped for air, spinning around to face the last man. Suit 3 backed up, realizing the odds had shifted. He looked at the door, then at us. He turned and ran for the far corner of the room, behind the yellow barrels. He's going for the emergency release. Ethan yelled. The gas. Suit 3 slammed his hand onto a red lever on the wall. A loud hiss filled the room. The yellow barrels didn't open, but the vents above them did. A thick, white vapor began to pour into the room. Halon gas. No. It smelled sweet. Sickly sweet. Solvents. Mask. Ethan screamed, grabbing the N95 from my hand and shoving it onto my face. He didn't have one. He pulled his shirt up over his nose. The logs, he choked out, pointing to the intake vent on the south wall. Get them. I ran to the vent. It was screwed shut, but the screws were rusted. I used the edge of the taser to pry them loose. My fingernails broke. I didn't care. I ripped the grate off. Inside, wrapped in oil-stained plastic, was a thick leather notebook. The evidence. I grabbed it. I got it. Ethan was coughing violently now. The gas was filling the floor, rising like water. The door is still locked. I yelled. We're trapped. Ethan stumbled toward me. His eyes were red, watering. The drainage, he wheezed. Under the grate. In the floor. He pointed to a heavy iron grate in the center of the room. It led to the storm drains. It weighs 200 pounds. I shouted. Together, he gasped. We grabbed the iron bars. The gas was at waist level now. We pulled. My back screamed in protest. Ethan roared, a sound of pure, primal effort. The grate lifted, just an inch. Then more. We shoved it aside, revealing a black hole that smelled of rot and old water. Go, Ethan said. He shoved me toward the hole. Ethan, come on. I'll follow, he said. Go. I dropped into the darkness. I landed in ankle-deep sludge. I looked up. Ethan was swaying at the edge of the hole. The gas was swirling around his knees. He looked back at the unconscious men. He hesitated. Ethan! I screamed. He jumped. He landed beside me, collapsing into the sludge. I grabbed him, dragging him away from the opening just as the white gas began to pour down into the tunnel like a waterfall. We scrambled deeper into the pipe, away from the light, away from the poison. We didn't stop until our lungs burned and the air smelled only of sewage instead of chemicals. We collapsed against the curved concrete wall of the tunnel. It was pitch black. I fumbled for the flashlight I had pocketed. I clicked it on.
Ethan was slumped over, coughing wet, hacking coughs.
He wiped his mouth. His hand came away with blood. Ethan, I whispered, terrified. I'm okay, he lied. Just old scar tissue. From the factory days. He looked at the notebook in my hands. He reached out and touched it like it was a holy relic. We got it, he whispered. We actually got it. Yeah, I said, my voice trembling. We got it. But the victory was short-lived. My phone, which had been dead in the sub-basement, suddenly buzzed. We must have moved under a street grate or a thinner section of concrete. 1 bar of signal. I looked at the screen. A text from Grover. Get out now. Charges are primed. Detonation moved up. 30 minutes. 30 minutes. What is it? Ethan asked, seeing the light of the phone screen. I quickly angled the phone away so he couldn't see the sender name. Just a spam notification, I lied. Battery is low. Check the time, he said. It's 4:15 a.m., I said. We have until 6, right? The news said 6. I looked at his face. He trusted me. He trusted the news. He didn't know that my father had moved the timeline to bury us. We need to keep moving, I said, standing up. This tunnel leads to the river outlet. It's about a mile. Wait, Ethan said. He shone his light on my face. Back there, with the guards. You used a code. L7 something. My heart stopped. And you said you were an auditor, he continued. His eyes were narrowing. The adrenaline was fading, and the engineer's logic was kicking back in. You knew the layout. You knew the override language. You handled that taser like you've been trained. I told you, I said, looking away. I have connections. I worked in corporate security before I became a philanthropist. Which firm? Why does it matter, Ethan? We are in a sewer. It matters, he said, standing up, wincing in pain but standing tall. Because those men weren't just security. They were cleaners. They were scrubbing the site. And they knew you. Or at least, they paused when you spoke. They paused because I sounded confident, I argued. No, he said softly. They paused because you sounded like them. The tension in the tunnel was thicker than the sewage. He was putting the pieces together. I am on your side, I said, stepping toward him. I just helped you steal the evidence that will take down Langford Industries. Would a spy do that? He looked at the notebook in my hand. Then he looked at me. The suspicion didn't leave his eyes, but it retreated slightly. We need to move, he said finally. But when we get out of here, I want the truth. The real truth. Not the rich girl with a hobby story. Deal, I said. We started walking again. The water was rising. It had started raining outside again, and the storm drains were filling up. 30 minutes, I thought. We have to run. Pick up the pace, I said. The water is rising. We splashed through the dark. I was leading, following the slight draft of fresh air. Then, we hit a dead end. A massive steel grate blocked the tunnel. It was locked from the outside. Debris, branches, trash, plastic bottles, was piled up against it, pushed by the current. Ethan threw his shoulder against it. It didn't budge. It's jammed, he grunted. We have to force it, I said. I lost the crowbar, he said. In the fight. We were trapped. Again. And this time, the water was rising fast. It was already at our knees. And in 20 minutes, the building above us would implode, collapsing this tunnel and burying us alive. The bolt cutters, I said. Did you bring the bolt cutters? In the backpack, he said. We looked at the backpack. It was on his back. He swung it around. He unzipped it. Empty. He stared at it. I took them out at the fence. To cut the wire. I left them there. Despair, cold and heavy, washed over me. We're stuck, he whispered. No, I said. I grabbed the grate. I shook it. Help me. We shook it. Nothing. Then, through the bars, I saw something. A flashlight beam. Outside the grate. Someone was there. Hey! I screamed. Help! We're trapped. The light moved closer. A figure appeared in the rain, standing on the riverbank outside the drainage pipe. Help us! Ethan yelled. The figure stepped closer. I saw the face. It was Grover, my head of security. My heart leaped. Grover! I yelled. Grover, it's me. Sophia, get us out. Use the winch on the truck. Ethan froze. He looked at me. Sophia. I ignored him. Grover, hurry. Grover stood there. He was wearing his black raincoat. He held a radio in his hand. He looked at me through the bars. He looked sad. He raised the radio to his lips. Target acquired, he said. I could hear him over the sound of the rain. She's in the south outflow, with the asset. Grover, what are you doing? I screamed. Open the gate. He lowered the radio. He looked me in the eye. I'm sorry, Miss Langford, he said. Your father gave the order. Containment is absolute. No witnesses. He turned around. Grover! I shrieked. Grover! He walked away. He walked up the embankment and disappeared into the night. I stood there, gripping the cold, wet bars, watching my only hope walk away. My father had just ordered his men to leave me to die. I slowly turned around. Ethan was standing there. The water was at his thighs now. He wasn't looking at the gate. He was looking at me. Miss Langford, he whispered. The sound of my name on his lips was worse than the explosion would be. Sophia. Langford. The notebook felt like lead in my hands. The deception was over. The pressure had peaked. And now, as the water rose and the clock ticked down to 0, I was trapped in a sewer with a man whose life I had ruined, and he finally knew that the devil he was fighting was standing right in front of him. Ethan, I started, tears mixing with the dirty water on my face. I can explain. He looked at me with a look of pure, unadulterated betrayal. You're one of them, he said. His voice broke. You're his daughter. Boom. A distant thud. A test charge, or the beginning of the end. Dust sifted down from the ceiling of the tunnel. We had maybe 10 minutes before the main charges blew. I sobbed. I am Langford. But please, Ethan, if you want to hate me, you have to survive first. We have to get this gate open. He stared at me. For a second, I thought he was going to drown me himself. But then, he looked at Ava's drawing, which he had tucked into the front pocket of his shirt. It was wet, dissolving. Give me the notebook, he said cold, hard. Ethan. Give me the notebook. I handed it to him. He shoved it into his jacket, zipped it up tight. Get back, he said. What? I said get back. He grabbed a heavy metal pipe that was part of the debris jammed against the gate. It was a piece of scaffolding. He jammed it into the hinge of the gate. Leverage, he muttered to himself. Give me a fulcrum. He found a rock. He jammed it in. Push, he ordered. He didn't look at me. Push on the end of the pipe. I pushed. He pushed. We strained against the metal. The water was at our waists. Push, he roared. With a shriek of tearing metal, the hinge snapped. The gate swung open a foot. We tumbled out into the riverbank, into the mud and the rain. We scrambled up the slippery slope, gasping for air. We ran. We ran until our lungs burned, away from the factory, away from the river. We reached the top of a hill, overlooking the industrial park. We stopped, collapsing onto the wet grass. I checked my watch.
4:59 Uhr nachts.
1 minute, I gasped. They moved it to 5. Ethan stood up. He watched the factory. The place where he had worked for 7 years. The place that killed Sarah. At exactly 5 a.m., a series of flashes lit up the base of the building. Crack boom. The sound hit us a second later. The ground shook. Slowly, gracefully, the massive structure of Sector 7 imploded. It folded in on itself, a cloud of black dust and smoke billowing up into the rain. It was gone. Ethan watched it fall. He didn't blink. I lay on the grass, shivering. I was alive. But as I looked at Ethan's back, I knew the real danger had just begun. He turned to face me. The explosion's afterglow backlit him, making him look like an avenging angel. "You have 5 minutes," he said. "Tell me why I shouldn't throw you back into that river. Did you like the twist with Grover? Are you subscribed yet? The hunter has become the hunted." It turns out that rock bottom has a basement, and in that basement, there is a mirror waiting to show you exactly what kind of monster you've become. The rain had stopped, but I was still drowning. We stood on that hill, shivering, covered in sewer sludge and the gray dust of a pulverized building. Ethan didn't throw me in the river. He didn't hit me. He did something worse. He looked at me with the kind of pity you reserve for a dying animal. 5 minutes, he had said. I told him everything. I vomited the truth faster than I could stop it. I told him about the night in the underpass. I told him about the credit card. I told him about the experiment. I told him I wanted to see if poverty corrupted the spirit. I watched his face as I spoke. I expected rage. I expected him to scream that I had treated his life, his struggle, his hungry daughter, as a petri dish for my own amusement. But he just listened. He wiped the mud from his face with a trembling hand. "You watched me," he said quietly. "Every transaction. You sat in your tower and watched me buy antibiotics for my daughter like it was a reality TV show." I wanted to help," I stammered. "I wanted to prove my father wrong." "No," Ethan said. He stepped closer, and I flinched. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the black card. The metal was scratched now, battered from the night's chaos. "You wanted to feel better about where your money comes from," he said. "You used us to launder your conscience, Sophia." He held the card out. "Take it. Keep it," I pleaded. "Ethan, you have no job now. They'll rescind the offer when they find out you were here. You need the money. Take Ava and run." He dropped the card in the mud at my feet. "I don't want your blood money," he said. "I have the notebook. That's all I need." He turned around. He began to walk away, limping slightly, his silhouette fading into the dawn. "Where are you going?" I cried out. "To get my daughter," he said without looking back. "And then I'm going to the press. Don't follow me. If I see you again, I won't be the one who saves you." I stood there alone on the hill. The sun was rising over the ruins of Sector 7. I looked down at the black credit card half buried in the dirt. The tool of my arrogance. I picked it up. It felt heavy. I had to go home. I had to face my father. I had to explain why his head of security tried to kill me. I thought that was the worst part of my day. I thought being almost drowned by Grover was the betrayal. I was wrong. I was so naively, stupidly wrong. I walked 3 miles to the nearest highway. I flagged down a taxi. The driver didn't want to let me in. I looked like a swamp creature, but I flashed the black card. He drove me to Langford Tower. I walked through the lobby. The concierge gasped. People stared. I didn't care. I marched to the private elevator. I slammed my hand on the button for the penthouse office. The doors opened. My father, Richard Langford, was sitting at his mahogany desk. He was eating a croissant. He looked fresh, rested, and utterly unbothered by the fact that he had just demolished a building and ordered the death of his only child. Grover was standing by the window. He was dry. He had changed his clothes. "You," I hissed, stepping into the room. "You tried to kill me." My father looked up. He didn't look shocked to see me alive. He looked disappointed, like I was a meeting that had run long. "Sophia," he said, "you look terrible. Go get changed. We have a press conference in an hour." "A press conference?" I screamed. "I'm going to the police. Grover left me in a flooding sewer. You blew up the factory to hide the evidence." "Sit down," my father said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a gavel. I'm not sitting down. Ethan has the notebook, Dad. He has the logs. He's going to expose everything. My father smiled. It was a cold, reptile smile. He picked up a remote control and pointed it at the wall-sized screen behind him. You mean this notebook? He asked. The screen flickered to life. It was a video feed. Grainy security footage. It showed Ethan. He was walking into the daycare center where he had left Ava overnight. He looked relieved. He hugged her. Then, police officers swarmed the frame. My hand flew to my mouth. No. We picked him up 10 minutes ago, Grover said calmly. Anonymous tip. An erratic man, covered in industrial waste, trespassing at a child care facility. Child Protective Services is already on the way. You monster! I lunged for the desk. Grover caught me effortlessly, twisting my arm behind my back. Let her go, Grover, my father said. She needs to see the rest. Grover released me. I fell into a chair. We confiscated his belongings, my father said, including a stolen backpack containing a very old, very water-damaged notebook. It's currently being processed. It will be ashes in 5 minutes. He saw the logs, I said, tears streaming down my face. He knows what you did to Sarah. He'll testify. Who will believe him? My father took a sip of coffee. He's a homeless man with a history of mental instability and a vendetta against the company. And now, he's also a thief. He didn't steal anything. Didn't he? My father tapped a key on his laptop. Sophia, let's talk about your little experiment. My blood ran cold. How do you? I monitor all company accounts, he said. Did you really think I gave you a black card with no oversight? I watched every penny. The antibiotics. The motel. The suit. I was trying to help him, I whispered. No, my father said. You were building a narrative. And it's a very useful narrative for us. He spun the laptop around so I could see the screen. It was a draft of a press release. Langford heiress victim of conman. Sophia Langford manipulated by disgruntled former employee into funding eco-terrorism plot. I stared at the words. The room started to spin. What is this? The narrative, my father explained patiently. Sector 7 exploded this morning. The EPA is going to ask questions. We can't say it was a scheduled demolition anymore. The timing was off. The permits were rushed. It looks suspicious. He leaned forward. Unless it was an act of sabotage. He pointed a finger at me. You, my dear, reckless daughter, were conned. A charming, manipulative homeless man targeted you. He played on your mommy issues. He got you to give him an unlimited credit card. And what did he buy with it? Look at the ledger, Sophia. He pulled up the transaction list. Crowbar, bolt cutters, tactical gear, masks, blueprints via your login. He used your money to buy the tools to break into our facility, my father said. He used your access codes to bypass security. And then, he rigged the gas lines to blow. He is an eco-terrorist. And you? You are the poor naive victim who unwittingly funded his crusade. I couldn't breathe. It was perfect. It was evil, and it was perfect. I was there, I whispered. I was in the tunnel. I helped him. We know, my father said. And that will be our little secret. As far as the world knows, you were home in bed. If you contradict this story, if you try to defend him, then you aren't the victim anymore, Sophia. You're the accomplice. He let that sink in. If you speak up, you go to prison for corporate espionage and arson. 10 to 20 years. And Ethan? He goes down regardless. But if you play the victim, you stay free. You keep your shares. And we get to paint Ethan Reed as the villain he needs to be to make this investigation go away. I looked at Grover. I looked at my father. They had trapped me. They had used my own empathy to build a cage for Ethan. I thought I was the observer. I was the weapon. What happens to Ava? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Foster care, my father said dismissively. System is full, but she'll survive. Kids are resilient. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a bridge collapsing. No, I said. My father raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. I won't do it. I won't lie. I will go to the police and tell them everything. I will tell them you ordered Grover to leave us to die. My father sighed. He looked genuinely bored. I was afraid of that, he said. You always were too soft. Your mother's defect. He typed something on his keyboard. Ping. My phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. And again. A cascade of notifications. Alert. Bank of America. Account frozen. Alert. Amex. Card cancelled. Alert. Real estate. Lease terminated. Alert. Trust fund access. Revoked. I looked at the phone. Zeros. Everything was turning to zeros. You have nothing, my father said. The clothes on your back belong to the company. The phone in your hand belongs to the company. You are trespassing. He pressed the intercom button. Security to the penthouse. Escort the intruder out. You can't do this, I stammered, backing away. I'm your daughter. You were an asset, he corrected. Now you are a liability. I'm cutting my losses. 2 guards, men I didn't recognize, not the friendly lobby guys, burst into the room. They grabbed my arms. God! I screamed. He didn't look up. He went back to his croissant. They dragged me out. They dragged me through the office I had grown up in. They dragged me to the elevator. They took me down to the lobby and threw me out onto the sidewalk. I landed on the concrete. The same concrete where I had parked my armored SUV just yesterday. It started to rain again. I stood up, trembling. I reached for my phone to call anyone. A lawyer. A friend. No service. He had cut the line. I was standing in the middle of Manhattan. I had no money. I had no home. I had no friends who would take a call from a terrorist sympathizer, which was exactly what the news would be calling me in 20 minutes. I was Ethan. The irony crushed me. I had wanted to simulate poverty. Now, I was living it. But unlike Ethan, I had no skills. I had no resilience. I was a soft, spoiled girl who had just lost her armor. But I had one thing. I patted my jacket pocket. The inner pocket. The black card was gone. But when I had handed the notebook to Ethan in the tunnel, I had kept something. A single loose page had fallen out when he shoved it into his jacket. I had grabbed it and shoved it into my pocket without thinking. I pulled it out now, shielding it from the rain. It was a handwritten log. Sarah's handwriting. Date, October 14th. Incident, leak in Unit 4. Sensors disabled by order of R.L. Richard Langford. Vapor smells sweet. Coughing up blood. Ethan's suspects. It wasn't the chemical data. It was a diary entry. It named my father directly. It wasn't enough to convict him in court. It was hearsay. But it was enough to prove to me that I wasn't crazy. I looked up at the tower. My father was up there, rewriting history. He had Ethan in a cell. He had Ava in the system. He had me on the street. He thought he had won. He thought he had stripped me of everything. And he was right. He had stripped me of the money, the status, the protection. But he had made a fatal mistake. He had put me in the exact same position as the man I had underestimated. He had made me desperate. And I remembered what Ethan had said to me in the underpass, weeks ago. Does poverty corrupt the spirit, or does it forge an unyielding light? I looked at the passers-by ignoring me. I felt the cold seep into my bones. Okay, Dad, I whispered to the rain. You want to see what a Langford can do with nothing? Watch me. I turned and walked into the crowd. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know how I would eat tonight. But I knew one thing. I had to break Ethan out of jail. Sophia has lost everything. She is homeless, penniless, and framed as a villain. Ethan is in jail, and Ava is lost in the system. The father holds all the cards. But Sophia has one page of a diary and a newfound rage. I used to think poverty was a lack of money. I was wrong. Poverty is a lack of exits. It is a room with no doors, where the walls are made of eyes that look right through you. The first 6 hours were a blur of denial. I walked. I kept moving because if I stopped, the cold would catch me. The rain had turned into a biting drizzle that soaked through my designer silk blouse and my cashmere coat. The coat, my last piece of armor, was heavy with water, dragging me down. I found myself standing in front of the Pierre, a hotel where I had spent my sweet 16. The doorman, a man named Henry whom I had tipped hundreds of dollars over the years, was standing under the awning. I walked up the steps. "Henry," I chattered, my teeth clattering together. "Please. I need a phone. I need to call a lawyer." Henry looked at me. He looked at my wet hair, my muddy pants, the wild look in my eyes. Then he looked at the iPad in his hand. He stepped in front of the revolving door. "You can't come in, Miss Langford," he said. His voice wasn't kind. It was professional. The kind of professional that hurts more than a slap. "Henry, it's me. I just need a phone." "Management has been clear," he said. "No entry. Police have been notified of a potential disturbance. Please move along." "I'm not a disturbance," I screamed, the hysteria rising. "I'm a human being. I tipped you for your daughter's tuition." "Move along," he repeated, looking past me at a limousine pulling up. I was invisible. No, worse. I was debris. I stumbled back onto the sidewalk. The hunger hit me then. I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. My stomach cramped so hard I doubled over. I looked at a trash can on the corner. A half-eaten bagel sat right on top. My brain screamed, "Don't you dare." My body screamed, "Survive." I reached for it. My hand shook. I was Sophia Langford. I was worth billions. And I was reaching for garbage. "Hey!" A businessman in a gray suit walked past, bumping my shoulder. "Get a job, junkie." I recoiled, pulling my hand back. The bagel fell into the muck. I walked away, burning with shame. The shame was hotter than the cold. I needed to go to the only place that made sense. The underpass. Where I found Ethan. I told myself it was because I might find someone who knew him. But the truth was, I had nowhere else to go. It was a 3-mile walk. My feet were bleeding in my heels. I took them off and walked barefoot on the concrete. The glass and grit cut my soles, but the pain was grounding. It kept me awake. Night fell. The city transformed. The shadows grew teeth. I reached the underpass. It was crowded. Tents, fires in oil drums, the smell of unwashed bodies and burning plastic. I walked in. I looked for the crate where Ethan used to sit. It was gone, replaced by a shopping cart filled with scrap metal. A group of men sat around a fire nearby. They stopped talking when I approached. They looked at my coat. It was dirty, but they could see the quality. They could see the cashmere. "Lost sweetheart?" one of them asked. He had a scar running down his chin and yellow eyes. "I'm looking for friends of Ethan Reed," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ethan?" The man laughed. "The guy with the kid. He's gone. Cops took him. Heard he blew up a building. Crazy bastard." "He didn't do it," I said. "Doesn't matter what he did," the man said, standing up. He held a knife. A small, rusty pocket knife. "Matters what you got. That's a nice coat." Please, I said, stepping back.
I'm freezing.
It's all I have. You got shoes? He asked, looking at my bare, bleeding feet. Nos shoes. Just the coat, then. He lunged. I didn't know how to fight. I had taken a self-defense class once at the club, but that was on mats with an instructor named Brad. This was concrete and desperation. He grabbed the lapel of my coat. I screamed. I flailed. Give it up, he snarled. I remembered the page. Sarah's diary page. It was in the inner pocket. No. I shrieked. I wasn't fighting for the warmth. I was fighting for the evidence. I clawed at his face. I dug my nails into his eyes. He howled and let go, but he yanked hard. The coat ripped. He pulled it off my shoulders. I fell backward onto the pavement, hard. My head cracked against the concrete. The man stood over me, holding my coat. He rummaged through the pockets. He pulled out the diary page. Paper, he scoffed. He crumpled it up and tossed it toward the fire. No. I scrambled on my hands and knees. I dove toward the fire barrel. I stuck my hand into the heat. I grabbed the ball of paper just before the flames caught it. I rolled away, clutching the paper to my chest, curling into a ball. The man laughed. Keep your trash, lady. Thanks for the jacket. He walked back to his friends. They laughed. They tried on my coat. I lay there in the dirt. I was wearing a silk blouse that was now translucent with rain and mud. The temperature was dropping. I was shivering so hard my muscles felt like they were tearing apart. I uncrumpled the paper. It was singed on the edge, but the writing was still there. By order of R.L. It was all I had left. I crawled into a corner, behind a concrete pillar where the wind couldn't reach me. I pulled my knees to my chest. I tried to hum a song my mother used to play on the piano, but I couldn't remember the melody. This was it. This was how I died. Hypothermia. Exposure. In the exact spot where I had judged Ethan for buying antibiotics. I closed my eyes. I drifted. The cold stopped hurting. That was a bad sign. I knew that from the survival shows I used to watch while eating popcorn in my home theater. When you stop feeling cold, you're dying. Get up. The voice was rough, like gravel in a blender. I opened my eyes. A shadow was standing over me. It was a woman. She was massive. She wore 3 coats and a beanie pulled low. She was holding a flashlight, not a tactical one, but an old, yellow plastic one. Go away, I whispered. I have nothing else to steal. I ain't stealing, she said. I'm telling you to get up before you freeze to the pavement. You die here. The rats eat you before the coroner comes. It's messy. I don't like messy. I can't, I said. My legs won't work. She bent down. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was like iron. She hauled me up like I was a rag doll. Walk, she ordered. She dragged me deeper into the underpass, past the men who had robbed me. They didn't look at her. They looked down. They were afraid of her. She led me to a tent set up against the far wall. It was reinforced with cardboard and pallets. Inside, it was surprisingly warm. There was a propane heater hissing in the corner. She threw me onto a pile of blankets. Here, she said. She handed me a cup. It was steaming. Drink. I took it. It smelled like beef broth. Cheap bouillon. I drank it. It burned my throat. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. Who are you? I asked, my voice returning slowly. They call me Mama T, she said. She sat on a bucket opposite me, watching me with sharp, dark eyes. You're the rich girl. The one on the news. I froze. You know. We got radios, she said. We got phones with cracked screens. We know everything. They say you helped the bomber. They say you're a terrorist. I'm not, I said, clutching the cup. And neither is he. I know, she said simply. You do. Ethan lived here for 6 months, she said. He fixed my heater. He fixed old Joe's wheelchair. He taught the kids how to read using discarded newspapers. A man like that don't blow up buildings unless he has a damn good reason. She leaned forward. And you. I saw you. Weeks ago. When you came in that big car. You gave him that card. I looked down in shame. I was testing him. I know, she said. We all saw it. We thought you were just another tourist, coming to the zoo to poke the animals. I was, I admitted, tears leaking out. I was horrible. And now I'm here. And I deserve it. Nobody deserves this, she said sharply. She gestured to the concrete walls. Nobody. Not even you. She reached into a bag and pulled out a pair of boots. They were old, worn work boots. Put these on, she said. Your feet are a mess. I pulled the boots on. They were 2 sizes too big, but they were dry. Why are you helping me? I asked. I'm a Langford. My family built the factory that poisoned half this city. Mama T looked at the heater. The orange glow reflected in her eyes. Because Ethan asked me to, she said. My heart skipped a beat. What? Before he left yesterday, she said. He came by. He knew he was going to do something dangerous. He told me, Mama, if things go south, watch out for the girl. She thinks she's in control, but she's going to fall hard. I covered my mouth. Ethan knew. He knew I was following him. Or at least, he knew I was involved. And even when he thought I was just a rich voyeur, he asked his community to protect me. He saved you, Mama T said. Even before you saved him in that sewer. He's in jail, I choked out. My father framed him. He's going to prison for life. Not if you stop feeling sorry for yourself, Mama T said. She stood up. You got something, don't you? That piece of paper you fought Razor for. You almost burned your hand off for it. I nodded. I pulled out the singed page. It's proof, I said. Proof my father knew about the leak that killed Ethan's wife. Good, she said. But paper don't open jail cells. You need people. You need noise. I have no money, I said. I have no influence. No one will listen to me. Mama T laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. You think money is the only power? She asked. Honey, you're in the underground now. We don't use credit cards here. We use leverage. We use secrets. And we use the fact that nobody looks at us. She walked to the flap of the tent. You want to save Ethan? She asked. Then stop thinking like a billionaire and start thinking like a survivor. The Langfords own the sky, but we own the streets. Every janitor in your father's building, they take the subway. Every maid in his hotel, they live in these neighborhoods. You think your father is invisible? We see him. She held out her hand. Come on. We got work to do. I stood up. I wobbled, but the boots held me steady. Where are we going? To make a withdrawal, she said. Not from a bank. From the people. We walked out of the tent. The rain had stopped. The city lights were reflecting in the puddles. I looked at Mama T. I looked at the camp. These people had nothing, yet they had a network that my father's billions couldn't buy. Loyalty. I realized then that my father was right about one thing. I had been stripped of everything. But he was wrong about what remained. He thought he had left me with nothing. But he had left me with the truth. And he had pushed me into the arms of an army he didn't even know existed. Mama T, I said, my voice hardening. My father has a private server. It's not in the cloud. It's physical. In his penthouse. If this diary page is real, the digital backup is on that server. The penthouse. Mama T whistled. That's a fortress. I know the codes, I said. I know the layout. I just can't get past the lobby. Mama T smiled. Her gold tooth glinted. Getting past a lobby is easy, she said. You just need to know when the garbage truck comes. I looked at her, confusion turning into understanding. The service entrance, I whispered. We got a guy, she said. Benny. He drives for sanitation. He owes me a favor for stitching up his hand last winter. I felt a spark. A tiny, dangerous spark of hope. Let's go find Benny, I said. As we walked into the dark, I looked back at the skyline. I saw Langford Tower piercing the clouds. My father was up there, sleeping in his Egyptian cotton sheets, thinking I was dead or defeated. He forgot the most important rule of business: never corner a desperate opponent. I wasn't Sophia Langford, the heiress, anymore. I was Sophia, the girl with the singed paper and the borrowed boots. And I was coming for him. Sophia has hit rock bottom and bounced. She has found an ally in Mama T and the invisible army of the city. She has a plan: infiltrate the penthouse via the garbage truck. But Ethan is still in a holding cell, and the dangers inside the prison are just as real. They say freedom isn't free. I found out the price tag was exactly $40 billion, and I had 30 seconds to decide if I was buying. The back of a garbage truck doesn't just smell bad. It smells like the secrets of a city. It smells like wasted food, discarded letters, and the rot of things people decided they didn't need anymore. For 26 years, I was the one throwing things away. Now, I was the trash. Benny, the sanitation driver Mama T introduced me to, was a man of few words. He gave me a jumpsuit that was 3 sizes too big and smelled of diesel. He gave me a cap to hide my hair. Keep your head down, he grunted as the truck rumbled toward the service bay of Langford Tower. Rich folks don't look at the help. They look through 'em. He was right. We rolled past the security checkpoint. The same guards who had thrown me onto the sidewalk 12 hours ago were standing there. They didn't even glance at the passenger seat. They saw the orange vest, they saw the truck, and their eyes slid right off me. I was part of the machinery now. I was invisible. We backed into the loading dock. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack the sternum. Service elevator is on the left, Benny whispered as we hopped out. He started hauling bags. You got 20 minutes before the next shift rotation. If you ain't out by then, you're stuck. Thank you, Benny, I said. He spat on the concrete. Don't thank me. Just make sure the bastard pays. I walked to the service elevator. I swiped the key card Benny had lifted from a supervisor. Beep. Green light. I stepped in. The elevator smelled of bleach and floor wax. It was the veins of the building, the hidden arteries that kept the luxury alive. I pressed the button for the 80th floor. The penthouse. The numbers ticked up. 10, 20, 40. I checked my pocket. I had the diary page. I had a USB drive Mama T had scavenged from a pawn shop. And I had a plan that was barely a plan. Get to the private server room behind my father's office, plug in the drive, download the Sector 7 backup, and get out. The doors opened on 80. The hallway was silent. It was 3 a.m. The cleaning crews had already finished this floor. I crept down the plush carpet. My heavy work boots sank into the wool. I felt like an intruder in my own life. I passed the portraits of my ancestors. They looked different now. They didn't look like pioneers. They looked like thieves in expensive suits. I reached the double mahogany doors of the CEO's office. Locked. I punched in the code, 1-9-8-4. The same code I had given Ethan for the credit card. My father loved Orwell. He thought it was an instruction manual. The lock clicked. I slipped inside. The office was vast, illuminated only by the glow of the city outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. I walked to the desk. The server room was behind a false bookshelf on the east wall. I knew the mechanism. I pulled the biography of Rockefeller. The shelf swung open. The server hummed in the dark, a monolith of blinking blue lights. This was it. The brain of the beast. I inserted the USB drive. I began the copy command. Accessing. Encryption detected. Bypassing. It was working. But it was slow. A progress bar appeared. Time remaining. 8 minutes. 8 minutes. I had to wait. I walked back out into the main office to keep watch. I paced around the desk where my father had sat yesterday, eating his croissant while he destroyed my life. That's when I saw it. On the center of the desk, sitting under a crystal paperweight, was a file folder. It wasn't there by accident. My father didn't leave things out. It had my name on it. Sophia. I reached out and opened it. It wasn't a legal threat. It wasn't a restraining order. It was a contract. Reinstatement agreement. Party A, Richard Langford. Party B, Sophia Langford. I read the terms. My breath hitched. It was a full restoration. My trust fund. My shares. My apartment. My position on the board. Everything I had lost would be returned to me immediately. There was just one condition. Clause 14. The undersigned, Sophia Langford, agrees to sign the attached affidavit confirming that she was under duress and mental manipulation by the accused, Ethan Reed. She testifies that Mr. Reed acted alone in the destruction of Sector 7 and that she had no prior knowledge of his radicalization. A pen was sitting right next to it. A Mont Blanc fountain pen. My father knew. He knew I would try to come back. He knew I would find a way in. He didn't change the locks because he wanted me to find this. This was his final test. He was offering me a lifeboat. Sign the paper, I whispered to myself, reading his handwriting in the margins. Don't be a martyr, Sophia. Be a Langford. I looked at the progress bar on the server screen. 50%. I looked at the contract. If I signed this, I could go back to my life. I could sleep in a bed tonight. I could stop smelling like garbage. I could be safe. And all I had to do was let Ethan take the fall. He was already in jail. He was already framed. My testimony would just be the nail in the coffin. Was it worth destroying myself for a man I had met 3 weeks ago? A man who was technically a stranger? I picked up the pen. The weight of it was familiar. It felt like power. Then, the large monitor on the wall flickered. It wasn't turned off. It was in sleep mode. My movement near the desk must have woken it. It displayed the active security feeds that my father monitored obsessively. Camera 1, the lobby. Camera 2, the service entrance. Camera 3, holding cell 4B, NYPD Precinct 9. My father had a direct feed into the police station. Of course he did. I looked at the screen. Ethan was there. He was sitting on a metal cot. He was still wearing his dirty clothes. He looked battered. His lip was split. One eye was swollen shut. He wasn't sleeping. He was holding something. I leaned closer to the screen. He was holding the photo of Ava he kept in his wallet. He was staring at it, rocking back and forth slightly. He looked broken. Not because he was in jail, but because he had failed her. Then, the door to his cell opened. 2 men walked in. They weren't police officers. They were wearing inmates' uniforms, but they moved with military precision. They didn't look like prisoners. My father's reach didn't stop at the precinct door. Ethan stood up. He knew. I saw the resignation in his shoulders. He tucked the photo of Ava into his pocket. He raised his fists. He was going to fight. But he was going to lose. They were there to silence him before he could talk to a lawyer. I looked at the contract. I looked at the server. 85%. I looked at the screen. The men lunged at Ethan. If I signed the paper, I could call my father. I could beg him to call off the hit. I could say, I signed it. Let him live. But my father wouldn't let him live. Ethan knew the truth about the chemicals. As long as Ethan breathed, the Langford Empire was at risk. Even if I signed, Ethan was dead. The only way to save him, to really save him, was to burn the empire down. I had to choose. Be a Langford, safe and soulless, or be Sophia, destitute and dangerous. I looked at the pen. I am not my father, I said aloud. The silence of the room swallowed the words. I took the pen. I stabbed it through the contract. I tore the paper down the middle. I ran to the server room. Download complete. I yanked the USB drive out. I ran back to the desk. I grabbed the keyboard controlling the wall screen. I had access. I was the auditor. I couldn't stop the men in the cell physically, but I could turn on the lights. I accessed the precinct's PA system through the networked feed. My father had installed the backdoor years ago to monitor union leaders. Now, I was using it. I keyed the mic. "This is a federal emergency broadcast," I shouted into the headset, hoping my voice sounded authoritative. "We have eyes on cell 4B. The cameras are recording to the cloud. If you touch him, you burn." On the screen, the two men froze. They looked up at the camera in the corner of the cell. They hesitated. Ethan took the opening. He headbutted the closest man and shoved him into the wall. He scrambled to the cell door and started banging on it, shouting for the guards. The inmates backed off. They knew they were being watched. They retreated out of the cell. Ethan was safe. For now. But I had just tripped every alarm in Langford Tower. Red lights began to flash in the office. A siren wailed. Unauthorized access detected. Penthouse lockdown initiated. I heard the click of heavy bolts sliding into place on the mahogany doors. The shutters on the windows began to descend. I was trapped. I had the drive. I had the evidence. But I was locked in a steel cage at the top of the world, and my father's security team, the real ones, the killers, were on their way up. I looked around frantically. There was no way out. The elevator was locked. The doors were sealed. Then I looked at the desk again. Not at the contract, but at the phone. I couldn't run. I couldn't hide. So I had to make sure that when they broke down that door, I wasn't the only one they found. I picked up the phone. I didn't dial the police. I dialed the one number that my father feared more than the law. I dialed the control room of the massive digital billboard that sat on top of the Times Square building opposite us. The one Langford Industries owned. The one that was currently displaying a 50-foot ad for our new green initiative. I had the admin codes. I had the drive. I plugged the USB into the media console on the desk. "You want a show?" I whispered, my hand hovering over the broadcast button. "I'll give you a show." The elevator dinged. Someone was cutting through the mahogany doors with a torch. Sparks flew. "Open up, Sophia." It was Grover's voice. "It's over." I looked at the upload button. If I pressed it, the internal memos, the safety logs, the video of the demolition, it would all go live. On Times Square. For the world to see. But once I did that, I was done. There was no going back. I would be the whistleblower. The traitor. I would be hunted for the rest of my life. I looked at the screen one last time. Ethan was sitting on his cot, chest heaving, alive. I smiled. "It's not over, Grover," I said to the door. "It's just beginning." I slammed my fist onto the enter key. Upload started. Target, Times Square main feed. Syncing. The door burst open. Grover and 3 armed men stormed in. "Get away from the desk!" Grover screamed, raising his gun. I put my hands up. I stood tall in my oversized sanitation jumpsuit, smelling of garbage and victory. "Too late," I said. I looked out the window as the shutters closed. Across the city, in the heart of Times Square, the giant smiling face of a model faded to black. And then, giant red letters appeared, scrolling across the screen for millions of tourists to see. The truth about Sector 7. Grover looked at the window, then at me. His face went pale. "What did you do?" he whispered. "I spent my inheritance," I said. And then, the butt of a rifle hit my temple, and everything went black. The evidence is live. The world knows. But Sophia has been captured by Grover and her father's men before she could escape. She is in their custody, and they are desperate. But this time, the revelation isn't just the data, it's the confrontation. It's the moment where the billionaire, the homeless man, and the corrupt father collide in a final showdown. The police are coming, but will they get there in time? Subscribe now. You do not want to miss the ending. The truth doesn't set you free. The truth is a wrecking ball. It smashes the walls you built, it breaks the bones of your lies, and it leaves you standing in the rubble, waiting to see who is still standing next to you. I woke up to the smell of aviation fuel and the deafening roar of a turbine engine. My head throbbed. I tried to move my hands, but plastic bit into my wrists. Zip ties. I was sitting on the wet concrete of the helipad, 80 stories up. The rain was still falling, whipping sideways in the wind generated by the black helicopter spinning its blades in front of me. I looked around. Grover was standing by the door to the stairwell, his gun drawn. He looked pale. He kept tapping his earpiece, listening to chatter I couldn't hear. And there was my father. Richard Langford was stuffing stacks of hard drives into a leather duffel bag. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His tie was undone. His hair, usually a helmet of silver perfection, was blowing wildly in the wind. He looked at me. He didn't look like a father. He looked like a CEO liquidating a failed asset. "You stupid girl," he shouted over the noise of the rotors. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I spat blood onto the concrete. "I told the truth." "You destroyed a legacy," he screamed, kicking the bag. 50 years. My father built this. I built this. And you burned it down for a homeless man and some dead workers. They were people. I yelled back, struggling against the ties. Sarah Reed was a person. Ethan is a person. They were numbers. Richard roared. They were the cost of doing business. Do you think the lights in this city stay on by magic? Do you think your trust fund appeared out of thin air? It takes sacrifice, Sophia. Someone has to carry the load. You didn't carry it, I said. You made them carry it. And then you buried them when they broke. He laughed. It was a jagged, hysterical sound. And now I'm leaving, he said, zipping the bag. The pilot has a flight plan to a private airfield in Jersey. From there, the Caymans. I have accounts you don't know about. I'll rebuild. But you're staying here. You can explain to the feds why you hacked the national grid. He signaled to the pilot. The engine whined louder. My father was going to get away. He was going to fly off into the night, and I was going to be left with the wreckage. Grover! Richard yelled. Get in! Leave her! Grover hesitated. He looked at me. He looked at the gun in his hand. Then, he looked over the edge of the parapet. Mr. Langford, Grover said, his voice straining. Look down. I don't care what's down there. Look! Grover shouted. My father walked to the edge. He looked down. From where I sat, I could see the glow. It wasn't just the city lights. It was the red pulse of police cruisers. Hundreds of them. They surrounded the tower. But it wasn't just police. It was people. Thousands of people. They were pouring into the streets, blocking the avenues. They were holding up phones. They were pointing at the screens in Times Square. I turned my head. I could see the reflection of the giant screen on the glass of the neighboring building. My broadcast was still running. It showed the memo. Subject, Unit 4 leak. Action, deny and bury. It showed the video of the demolition charges being set early. And it showed a picture. A picture of Sarah Reed in her hospital bed, holding Ethan's hand. The city wasn't just watching. The city was angry. They breached the lobby, Grover said, listening to his earpiece. SWAT is in the elevators. NYPD is securing the perimeter. The FAA just grounded all non-emergency flights in the sector. He looked at the helicopter. We can't fly, sir. They'll shoot us down. My father's face went white. The escape hatch had just slammed shut. Then we fight, Richard snarled. We hold the building. We have hostages. He pointed at me. Grab her. Stand her up. Grover walked toward me. Don't do it, Grover, I said. He's finished. Look at him. He's a rat on a sinking ship. If you touch me, you go down for kidnapping. If you surrender now, you're just a witness. Grover stopped. He looked at my father, who was frantically typing on his phone, trying to move money that was probably already frozen. Grover, my father barked. I pay you to follow orders. You stopped paying me an hour ago, Grover said quietly, when the accounts froze. Grover holstered his gun. He raised his hands. I'm done. You traitor. My father pulled a small pistol from his ankle holster. He aimed it at Grover. Bang! The door to the roof exploded outward. Not from a gunshot, but from a breaching ram. Police! Get down! Get down! A swarm of tactical officers poured onto the roof, rifles raised, lights blinding us. Drop the weapon! My father spun around, wild-eyed. He pointed the gun at the cops, then at me, then at the pilot. The pilot killed the engine and threw his hands up. It's my building, my father screamed. Get off my roof! The circle of officers tightened. And then the ranks parted. A man walked through. He wasn't wearing SWAT gear. He was wearing a cheap, dirty suit that was covered in soot. He had a bandage over his left eye and a split lip. He was walking with a limp, but he moved with the unstoppable momentum of a glacier. Ethan. He walked right past the heavily armed officers. They didn't stop him. The captain on the scene must have known. This was his moment. Ethan stopped 10 feet from my father. My father aimed the gun at Ethan's chest. Stay back! Richard yelled. I'll kill him. I swear to God, I'll kill him. Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't even look at the gun. He looked Richard Langford in the eye. You already killed me, Ethan said. His voice wasn't loud, but in the sudden silence of the dying helicopter engine, it carried across the roof. You killed me 3 years ago when you poisoned my wife. You killed me when you fired me for trying to save her. You killed me when you took my house. He took a step forward. Shoot me, Ethan said. Go ahead. It won't change anything. The whole world knows who you are now. My father's hand shook. The gun wavered. I created jobs, my father stammered, his defense crumbling into fragments. I built an empire. You built a graveyard, Ethan said, and you made us pay rent to live in it. Ethan reached into his jacket. The cops tensed. He pulled out the notebook. The water-damaged, singed notebook that we had carried through the sewer. This is Sarah's, Ethan said. She wrote down every time she smelled that sweet gas. She wrote down every time she coughed up blood. She wrote down that she was scared you would hurt me if she spoke up. He held it out. She was right. My father stared at the notebook. The physical proof of his sins. It's over, Richard, I said from the ground. Put the gun down. My father looked at me. Then he looked at Ethan. Then he looked at the ring of police officers. He realized there was no deal to be made. No check to be written. He lowered the gun. Before it even hit the concrete, the SWAT team swarmed him. They tackled him to the wet ground. I watched my father, the man who thought he was a god, get pressed into a puddle of rainwater and handcuffed like a common criminal. Richard Langford, an officer, recited, "You are under arrest for conspiracy, environmental endangerment, arson, and attempted murder." The words washed over me. An officer came over and cut the zip ties on my wrists. I rubbed the chafed skin. I stood up, my legs shaking. I watched them drag my father away. He was screaming about lawyers. He was screaming about loyalty. He didn't look at me. The roof cleared out, leaving only a few officers securing the scene. Grover was being led away in cuffs, head down. And then, it was just me and Ethan. He stood there in the rain, holding the notebook. He looked exhausted. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 24 hours. I walked over to him. I didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry," felt too small. "Thank you," felt too selfish. "You got out," I said. "Someone turned on the lights," he said. A faint ghost of a smile touched his lips. "And someone hacked a billboard." "I had to make a choice," I said. "I chose the truth." "I know," he said. "I saw the news in the squad car on the way here. You uploaded everything. Even the stuff that implicates you." "I was the auditor," I said. "I signed the logs. I'm going to prison too, Ethan." He looked at me. He reached out and took my hand. His hand was warm, rough, and real. "No," he said. "You're the whistleblower." I spoke to the district attorney downstairs. I gave them the notebook. I told them you were the one who got me inside. I told them you were undercover. My eyes widened. "You lied for me?" "I didn't lie," he said. "You were undercover. You just didn't know it when you started. You thought you were testing me, but you were really testing yourself." "Did I pass?" I asked, tears mixing with the rain on my face. Ethan squeezed my hand. "You're still standing," he said. "And your dad is in cuffs. I'd say you passed." He looked out at the city. The sirens were fading. The red scrolling text on the billboard had changed. It now showed a simple message: "Justice for Sector 7. "What about Ava?" I asked. "CPS is bringing her to the station," he said. "The DA promised I'd walk out with her tonight. They can't keep a hero in custody." He turned to me. "Come with me." "Where?" "To get her." She asked about the nice lady with the sad eyes. "I think she wants to say thank you." I broke down then. The adrenaline crashed, and the grief hit me. The grief for the father I lost, the childhood I never had, and the pain I had caused. Ethan pulled me into a hug. It wasn't a romantic hug. It was the embrace of two soldiers who had survived the same war. He smelled of rain and cheap soap, and it was the most comforting smell in the world. "It's okay," he whispered. "The storm is over." We walked to the elevator. The same elevator I had taken up to steal the data. As the doors closed on the rooftop, shutting out the wind and the noise, I looked at my reflection in the metal doors. I was dirty. My hair was matted. I had a bruise forming on my cheek. I was wearing a janitor's jumpsuit and stolen boots. I had never looked more beautiful. But the story doesn't end here. The bad guy is in cuffs, but the world is still broken. We had torn down the castle, but now we had to live in the ruins. Subscribe now. Hit the bell. Because the resolution is coming, and you need to see what happens when a billionaire and a homeless dad try to build a new life from scratch. The ending will make you cry, I promise. The elevator dinged at the lobby. The doors opened. A wall of cameras flashed. The press was here. Ethan stepped out first. He shielded his eyes. He looked back at me and extended his hand. "Ready?" he asked. I took a deep breath. I took his hand. "Ready." We walked out into the blinding light together. The king has fallen. The queen has abdicated. And the pawn has become the knight. Justice has been served, but at a great cost. We spend our whole lives trying to build towers to touch the sky, forgetting that the most important things are usually found in the dirt, right where we left them. 6 months. That's how long it takes for a scandal to fade from the front page of the New York Times. It's how long it takes for a billionaire to be sentenced to 25 years in a federal penitentiary. And it's how long it takes for a crater in the ground to turn into a garden. I stood at the edge of the park. The grass was new, a vibrant, impossible green against the gray backdrop of the city. The air didn't smell like sulfur anymore. It smelled of wet earth and blooming jasmine. There was a sign at the gate, made of reclaimed steel from the old factory beams. The Sarah Reed Memorial Park and Community Garden. I adjusted my scarf. It wasn't cashmere. It was wool, bought at a department store. I wasn't wearing heels. I was wearing sneakers. I checked my watch. I was early. A lot had changed since that day on the rooftop. My father, Richard Langford, was currently residing in a maximum security facility in Pennsylvania. The trial was the most watched event of the decade. Ethan's testimony and the notebook sealed his fate. The jury took 2 hours. The Langford empire was dissolved. The board was fired. The assets were liquidated by the government to pay for the massive environmental cleanup and the class action lawsuit for the victims' families. And me. I walked. Ethan was true to his word. He stood in front of the judge and told them I was the inside man. The auditor. The press had a field day with it. The billionaire whistleblower. The prodigal daughter. I lost the penthouse. I lost the private jet. I lost the accounts in the Caymans. But the courts allowed me to keep a small personal trust fund that had been set up by my grandmother, untouched by my father's crimes. It wasn't billions. It was enough to live on. Enough to disappear to an island and drink margaritas for the rest of my life if I wanted to. But I didn't want to disappear. I walked through the park gates. Children were playing on a jungle gym that looked suspiciously like an abstract molecule structure. Ethan's design, obviously. I saw him near the pavilion. He was wearing a high-visibility vest over a flannel shirt. He held a clipboard. He was pointing at a drainage ditch, instructing a team of volunteers, including Mama T, who was shouting orders louder than him. He looked healthy. The gauntness was gone. His eyes were bright. He looked like the man he was supposed to be before the world broke him. And running around his legs, chasing a golden retriever, was Ava. She was laughing. It was a sound that healed something deep inside my chest. She wasn't holding a medical bear anymore. She was holding a soccer ball. I hesitated. Part of me still felt like the intruder, the Langford ghost haunting their happy ending. "You're late," a voice said. I turned. Ethan was standing there, smiling. He had spotted me before I spotted him. "I was just admiring the landscaping," I said. "You did good, Reed." "We did good," he corrected. He walked over and hugged me. It was easy now. Familiar. "How's the job hunt?" he asked. "Going okay," I lied. Turns out, corporate saboteur isn't a great skill to list on LinkedIn. Most companies are afraid I'll hack their billboards. Ethan laughed. "Their loss. How is she?" I nodded toward Ava. "She's great. Top of her class in reading. And she asks about you every day. She wants to know when Auntie Sophia is coming for dinner." "Auntie Sophia," I repeated, the words tasting sweet. "I like that." We walked toward the center of the park. There was a small crowd gathering. Today was the official dedication. "I have something for you," Ethan said. He reached into his pocket. I tensed. "Ethan, if it's money, I don't want it. I told you, the settlement money is for you and Ava." "It's not money," he said. He pulled out a small, rectangular object. It looked like a credit card. I froze. "Is that?" "No," he grinned. "It's not the black card. That's in an evidence locker." He handed it to me. It was an access badge. Sophia Langford. Director of Operations. The Reed Foundation. I stared at it. Director of Operations? We need someone to run the logistics, Ethan said. I can build the parks, and Mama T can run the streets, but we need someone who knows how to scare the suits in City Hall. Someone who knows how to manage a budget without buying a yacht. He looked at me seriously. You said you wanted to know if poverty corrupts the spirit. You found out it doesn't. But wealth. Wealth corrupted your family. I want you to take this job and prove that money can be used to fix things, not just break them. I want you to run the foundation with me. I looked at the badge. Then I looked at the park. This was built on the ruins of my father's sin, and it was beautiful. I don't know if I'm qualified, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You broke into a high-security penthouse and hacked Times Square, Ethan said. I think you can handle a non-profit. I smiled. I clipped the badge onto my coat. Okay, I said. I'm in. Good, he said. Because we have a board meeting in 10 minutes. Mama T wants to buy a school bus and turn it into a mobile library. I told her we need to run the numbers. We can afford it, I said instinctively. If we cut the overhead on the admin costs and... I stopped. I was already working. Ethan laughed. That's the spirit. The ceremony began. Ethan gave a speech. He talked about Sarah. He talked about the invisible people of the city. He didn't talk about hate. He talked about resilience. When it was over, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city. I sat on a bench, watching Ava play. Ethan sat next to me. You know, I said. I never asked you. That first night. When I gave you the card. Yeah. I asked what you bought that broke my heart. It wasn't the medicine. It wasn't the hotel. Ethan looked at me. What was it? It was the donation, I said. The $50 to the oncology ward. You had nothing, and you gave away what you didn't even own yet. Ethan shrugged. You can't keep what you don't give away, Sophia. That's the only rule that matters. If you hold on to it too tight, it rots. He reached into his bag. Speaking of purchases, he said, I made one last purchase on the old account before it was frozen. I never told you. What? I bought a domain name. He handed me a piece of paper. Website, www.thelangfordredemption.org. I thought you might want to tell your side of the story one day, he said. The real story, not the one your dad tried to write. I looked at the paper. The Langford Redemption, I whispered. It's your name, Sophia, Ethan said. Take it back. Make it mean something good. I looked at him, and I realized that the experiment was finally over. I had set out to test a homeless man. I thought I was the scientist. But he was the teacher. He taught me that dignity isn't a commodity. He taught me that family isn't blood. And he taught me that the only way to save yourself is to save someone else. Thank you, I said. Come on, Ethan said, standing up. Dinner's on me. And by on me, I mean hot dogs from the cart on the corner. I'm on a budget. I laughed. I love hot dogs. We walked toward the exit, Ava running ahead of us, the three of us silhouetted against the skyline of a city that was a little bit cleaner, a little bit kinder, and a little bit more honest than it was yesterday. My name is Sophia Langford. I used to be a billionaire. Now, I'm something much richer. I'm a friend. So, what is the lesson here? We live in a world that judges us by the size of our wallets. We scroll through social media, envying the cars, the clothes, the perfect lives. We think, if only I had that, I would be happy. I would be good. But Sophia had it all, and she was empty. Ethan had nothing, and he was full. The moral of this story is simple but terrifying. Money amplifies who you already are. If you are greedy, money will make you a monster. If you are kind, money will make you a hero. Sophia thought she was testing Ethan's morality. But really, Life was testing hers. And she only passed when she lost the one thing she thought defined her. Don't wait until you have $1 million to be generous. Don't wait until you lose everything to be grateful. Look at the person next to you. Look at the person struggling on the street. They aren't a test. They are a mirror. What do you see when you look? Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, if you felt the anger in the factory and the relief in the park, please do me a favor. Click that subscribe button. It's free for you, but it means the world to us. And turn on notifications. Because next week, we have a story about a woman who discovers her husband's secret family, living in her own attic. You don't want to miss it. Leave a comment below. If you were given a credit card with no limit, what is the first thing you would buy? Be honest. I'll be reading the comments. Stay safe. Stay kind. And remember, the real wealth is the people you love. I'll see you in the next one.